I started off today by rough cutting my boards a ½ inch over my final size. So my 48 ended up being 48.5, and I took my drop off after cutting one each and cut two of my shorter boards. It gave me a whole lot less drop off in the end, saving a lot of material. You must always think about saving material when you're doing these jobs. Then I moved over to the planer and started cleaning the face off. I truthfully do not like the finish that the factory boards give, so I went through and cleaned them up, got both sides nice and smooth on them. When I finally got all that nice and smooth up, I was ready to move on to the table saw. At that point, I started to cut the sides down. Again, removing the factory cuts and removing them round corners. I like a good straight cut so when they assemble they look nice. And you'll notice in the video here that when I started cutting the second side, there were several pieces breaking off, being too thin. And that's just showing you how bad the board was and not being squared up when I first started. And if you don't feel safe doing this, do not worry. You don't have to do it like this. You can always do it differently. I've been doing it for several years and I've learned a lot. And you'll notice I'm running from the side of the machine so I don't have to worry about drop off. Then I moved over to the final cut. And when I did the final cut, if you'll notice I'm moving some shims in the back. I got a ½ inch and 5/8 shim in the back. So I'll start off with the ½ inch shim, which you see me move there. Make my first cut. As soon as that's cut, I'll switch my board over and move my other shim up. That's how I'm able to turn the board end over and cut it and have all my finish. Then I went ahead and marked the end of my board so I could drill them. So I put my screws in the end of it here. I moved into the clamping them up and getting ready to put my screws in on the side. These are 2½ inch screws and they went straight in, just nice, easy. And you always want to make sure when you put these screws in, you have plenty of screw into the material. So occasionally just put it to the side of the board and check to see how much you're going into your board. But you can see that was good. And then I clamped up on the sides of it here with all the pieces assembled. I'm going to put these cabinet screws in. I like the flat heads on them. And they do pull these boards nice and tight together. Took a little bit to get them started, but once they're started, they go right on in and tightened up. I had to clamp it up because it kept wanting to move so much. And I have to admit, getting these screws started was not the easiest thing because I didn't have pre-started pilot holes on these. I wanted to keep them nice and smooth on the heads. But after I got these 3 screws here in, I'm ready to move on to my next area. Let's see, come on, get the screw in. It's always impatient to watching these videos again when you're trying to do a voiceover right. There it is. Now I can unclamp all this. After it was assembled, I noticed I had a big crack in here, and wasn't too bad, but I decided to put some wood putty in here, fill that hole in where that nail fell in, and just make sure you massage it in and let it dry good, and then you come back and sand it afterwards. This is how you make them seams look like they're not even there. A little wood putty, a little sanding. I went to drill the pilot holes for the bottom here, and of course, as I get through doing the pilot holes, my battery died on the camera and shut down. So yep, I'm going along and all of a sudden it just stops the video and yep, that's where the battery died. I'm taking my flush bit now and trimming the end of it so it's nice and smooth all the way around. Look, oh, when I went around the corner I got a little off there. I had to go back and redo a little. And I'm not going to waste your time showing you how I went all the way around this thing. So
okay.
Here we go.
Time to open this package and see what we got in it.
Got my wheels for my cart. Let's see. Big heavy bolts. Another wheel, another wheel. The washer package for smaller screws. Make sure I didn't split the wood. I already got a drill set up in a driver here. I just finished building this little workbench, and yes, it rolls extremely easy. My other one didn't roll. If I push it over here, you see I got my power outlet, easy to get to. And before I finished it, I even went to do one of my upgrades. Now I can have my paper here. I can just roll up, do my glue ups, and get rid of it. Or if I don't actually make it dirty, I can just roll it back up. As I promised, it'd be an outfeed for my table saw. But now as I'm running across the table saw, I have easy, it just drops right on and keeps on going. It has locking wheels, so I have no problem locking it up if I don't want it to roll around like this. As I promised, there would be no screws on the outside that you could see. Give me a second, let me take the camera and I'm going to walk a close view of it so you can see it better. So you can see there is no screws holding this thing together that's going to get in the way. There's nothing here on the top. Except for I did have this little chip out here. I'll have to deal with that later. But a nice clean finish on the bottom here for storage. A good spot here on the top to work with. And I got them very large wheels here on the bottom for rolling around with. My power cord going to the wall will be here tomorrow. But everything else is here. I got a plug in here on this side. And if you run all the way around to the other side, I have another plug in. And that's where the cord leaves the table and heads over to the workbench area for power.